What happens when a Wall Street CEO's wife walks into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom for a traffic violation, then openly mocks a $150 parking fine by pulling out $10,000 in cash and throwing it at the clerk while laughing about how little money means to her? This entitled woman is about to learn that some mockery backfires instantly, some displays of wealth reveal darker secrets, and some judges ask one simple question that unravels everything. But what makes this case absolutely devastating isn't just the disrespectful behavior or the excessive cash. It's what Judge Caprio discovered when he asked where that money came from, triggering an IRS investigation that exposed $47 million in hidden offshore accounts and sent her hedge fund CEO husband to federal prison. Subscribe now, because what unfolds next is unforgettable. It's a Thursday afternoon in Providence Municipal Court, and the session is running through typical traffic violations. Parking tickets, speeding fines, expired registrations. Nothing unusual, nothing extraordinary. Just another day processing the endless stream of minor infractions that flow through municipal courts across America. Judge Frank Caprio sits at the bench, working through cases with his characteristic patience and fairness. He has heard thousands of these cases over his 35-year career. He treats every person who comes before him with dignity, regardless of the violation. The bailiff calls the next case. The City of Providence versus Catherine Elizabeth Harrington. Charge: illegal parking in a handicap zone without proper permit. The courtroom doors open, and Catherine Harrington enters. Everything about her entrance is designed to communicate wealth and status. She's wearing a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost $6,000, Chanel by the look of it. Her shoes are Christian Louboutin, the signature red soles visible with each step, at least $1,200. Her handbag is a Hermes Birkin, the kind with waiting list measured in years, easily $40,000. Diamond earrings catch the courtroom lights, sparkling brilliantly, probably 3 carats each. Her hair is perfectly styled, professionally blow-dried that morning. Her makeup is flawless, applied by someone who knows exactly what they are doing. Her nails are immaculate, a fresh manicure with subtle French tips. She's 43 years old, and she walks with the absolute confidence of someone who has never faced a consequence she couldn't buy her way out of. Behind her, keeping a respectful distance, walks a young woman in her mid-20s carrying a designer briefcase. This is clearly Catherine's personal assistant, there to handle whatever minor inconveniences arise. Catherine approaches a defendant's table, but she doesn't sit. She stands, looking around the courtroom with barely concealed disdain, as if the entire proceeding is beneath her. Judge Caprio reviews the case file. Ms. Harrington, you're here regarding a parking violation. On November 3rd at approximately 2:30 p.m., you park your vehicle in a handicapped parking space outside the Providence Place Mall without displaying a handicapped parking permit. Is this correct? Catherine's voice is crisp, educated, and dripping with condescension. If that's what your paperwork says, I suppose it must be correct. Ms. Harrington, I'm asking you, did you park in a handicapped space without a permit? She sighs dramatically. Yes, I parked there. I was running into the mall quickly to pick up something from Nordstrom. I was gone for maybe 10 minutes. It's hardly a serious offense, Your Honor. Judge Caprio's expression remains neutral. Ms. Harrington, handicapped parking spaces exist for people with mobility disabilities. Parking there without a permit prevents people who actually need those spaces from using them. Catherine waves her hand dismissively. I understand that, but there were other handicapped spaces available. I wasn't hurting anyone. The law doesn't make exceptions based on whether other spaces were available. The law is clear. Handicapped spaces are reserved for permit holders. The fine for this violation is $350. Catherine laughs. Actually laughs out loud. $350? You're joking. Judge Caprio's voice becomes firmer. Ms. Harrington, I assure you I'm not joking. Handicap parking violations carry serious fines specifically to deter people from using those spaces illegally. Catherine turns to her assistant. Melissa, can you believe this? $350 for parking in the wrong spot for 10 minutes. Melissa, the assistant, looks deeply uncomfortable but says nothing. Catherine turns back to Judge Caprio, her tone dripping with mockery. Your Honor, I spend more than $350 on lunch. My husband and I just returned from a weekend in Paris where we spent $350 on a single bottle of wine. $350 is completely meaningless to me. The courtroom has gone very quiet. Several people in the gallery are staring in disbelief. Even the court clerk has stopped typing. Judge Caprio's voice is measured, controlled. Ms. Harrington, the amount of a fine is established by law. Your personal wealth is not relevant to the violation. Oh, but it is relevant, Your Honor. Catherine reaches into her homie's handbag and pulls out a wallet. Not a regular wallet. A designer wallet, Louis Vuitton, probably $800 by itself. She opens it, revealing stacks of cash. She begins pulling out $100 bills, counting them theatrically, making sure everyone can see. 100, 200, 300, 400. She continues counting, her voice getting louder with each bill. 800, 900, 1,000. She places $1,000 on the defendant's table. Then she continues pulling out more cash. Her wallet seems bottomless. She counts out another 1,000, then another, then another. The court clerk is frozen, unsure what to do. The bailiff has taken a step forward, equally uncertain how to handle this display. Catherine keeps counting. $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. She's making a show of it now, enjoying the attention, enjoying the shock on people's faces. Finally, she places exactly $10,000 in $100 bills on the defendant's table in neat stacks. $10,000 in cash, sitting in open court. She looks up at Judge Caprio with a smile that's pure contempt. There's $10,000, Your Honor. That should more than cover a $350 parking ticket. Keep the change. Maybe you can use it to buy better coffee for the courthouse or something. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Several people are pulling out their phones, taking pictures. A reporter in the back row is scribbling frantically. Catherine continues, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You see, Your Honor, $350 means nothing to me. My husband is Jonathan Harrington, CEO of Harrington Capital Management. Perhaps you've heard of it. We manage $3.4 billion in assets. We own properties in Manhattan, the Hamptons, Miami, and Aspen. Last month, my husband's bonus alone was $8 million. So you'll forgive me if I don't feel particularly punished by a $350 parking fine. She picks up one of the $1,000 stacks of cash and waves it in the air. This is my Saturday afternoon shopping money. This is what I carry for incidentals. This is nothing. Judge Caprio has been watching this performance with growing concern. Not anger yet. Concern. Because something about this display is wrong. Very wrong. Ms. Harrington. Judge Caprio says slowly, I need to ask you a question. Where did that cash come from? Catherine blinks, caught off guard by the question. What do you mean, where did it come from? It's my money. I withdrew it from my bank. You withdrew $10,000 in cash from your bank to carry in your purse. No, I actually withdrew $25,000 earlier this week. I like having cash available. Is that a crime? Judge Caprio's expression has changed. His experienced eyes are now studying Catherine very carefully. Ms. Harrington, it's unusual for someone to carry that amount of cash. Most people at your wealth level use credit cards, bank transfers, or checks for large purchases. Catherine's confidence wavers slightly. I prefer cash. It's simpler. And you withdrew $25,000 cash from which bank? I don't see how that's relevant to a parking ticket, Your Honor. Answer the question, please. Which bank? Catherine's hands are moving to gather up the cash, suddenly nervous. I withdrew it from several banks. Actually, I spread it out. Judge Caprio leans forward. You withdrew $25,000 by making multiple withdrawals from multiple banks to avoid triggering reporting requirements. The courtroom has gone completely silent. Everyone suddenly understands that something significant is happening. Catherine's voice rises defensively. It's my money. I can withdraw my own money however I want. Ms. Harrington, federal law requires banks to report cash transactions over $10,000 to the IRS. Structuring withdrawals specifically to avoid those reporting requirements is called structuring, and it's a federal crime. Catherine's face flushes red. I wasn't structuring anything. I just prefer to maintain privacy about my financial transactions. By deliberately making multiple smaller withdrawals to avoid federal reporting requirements. That's the definition of structuring, Ms. Harrington. Catherine's assistant, Melissa, has backed away from the defendant's table, clearly trying to distance herself from whatever is unfolding. Judge Caprio asks another question. Ms. Harrington, why do you need $25,000 in cash? What purchases require that amount of cash instead of traceable payment methods? That's none of your business. It became my business when you brought $10,000 in cash into my courtroom and made a spectacle of mocking the justice system. It became my business when you admitted to making structured withdrawals specifically to avoid federal reporting requirements. Catherine is visibly panicking now, trying to gather the cash off the table and stuff it back into her handbag. I'm paying my fine. Can I leave now? No, Ms. Harrington, you cannot leave. Bailiff, please secure that cash as evidence. Evidence? Evidence of what? I haven't done anything wrong. Judge Caprio picks up his phone. Get me the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Tell them I have a potential structuring case that requires immediate attention. Catherine's face goes pale. You can't be serious. I came here for a parking ticket. And you chose to bring $10,000 in cash, mock the court, brag about your wealth, and admit to making structured withdrawals to avoid federal reporting requirements. Those choices have consequences, Ms. Harrington. Within minutes, the courtroom speakerphone activates. A professional female voice comes through. This is Special Agent Linda Vasquez, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Judge Caprio. Yes, Agent Vasquez. Thank you for responding so quickly. I have you on speakerphone in Providence Municipal Court. What can I do for you, Your Honor? Agent Vasquez, I'm hearing a simple parking violation case, but the defendant, Catherine Harrington, brought $10,000 cash into my courtroom. When I asked where the cash came from, she admitted to withdrawing $25,000 from multiple banks in small amounts to avoid federal reporting requirements. She specifically stated she spread it out across multiple banks and prefers privacy about her financial transactions. There's a brief pause. Your Honor, that's a textbook description of structuring. Did the defendant make these statements voluntarily? Completely voluntarily. She's being quite vocal about her wealth and her financial practices. Your Honor, structuring deposits or withdrawals to evade the Bank Secrecy Act reporting requirements is a federal crime under 31 U.S.C. 5324. It carries up to 5 years in federal prison. More importantly, people who engage in structuring often do so to hide other financial crimes, tax evasion, money laundering, fraud. Catherine tries to interrupt. This is insane. I'm being persecuted for having money. Agent Vasquez continues. Your Honor, the defendant mentioned her husband is Jonathan Harrington, CEO of Harrington Capital Management. Yes, she specifically mentioned that company manages $3.4 billion in assets. Your Honor, we've actually had our eye on Harrington Capital for about a year. We've been investigating possible offshore tax evasion schemes. Hedge fund executives hiding income in foreign accounts to avoid U.S. taxes. If Mrs. Harrington is structuring cash withdrawals, that could indicate they are moving money through unreported channels. Judge Caprio asks, what do you need from me, Agent Vasquez? Your Honor, I need you to hold the defendant while I dispatch agents to your location. We'll need to interview her about those cash withdrawals, and we'll need to secure the $10,000 cash as evidence. We'll also be executing search warrants on the Harrington residence and Harrington Capital Management offices. Catherine's voice is shaking now. You can't do this. I want my lawyer. Jonathan will destroy you for this. Agent Vasquez responds calmly. Threatening law enforcement and judicial officers is unwise. Your Honor, we're 20 minutes away. Can you hold the defendant? Consider her held, Agent Vasquez. The next 20 minutes are excruciating for Catherine Harrington. She sits at the defendant's table, no longer the confident, mocking woman who entered the courtroom. She's pale, trembling, her expensive clothes and jewelry suddenly looking like costumes. Her assistant, Melissa, has left the courtroom entirely, presumably to distance herself from whatever is about to happen to her employer. Catherine tries calling her husband multiple times, but each call goes to voicemail. She leaves increasingly frantic messages. Jonathan, call me back immediately. Something terrible is happening. They are saying something about the IRS. Call me. The courtroom doors open, and 4 IRS Criminal Investigation agents enter, led by Special Agent Linda Vasquez. They are wearing blue windbreakers with IRSCI emblazoned in yellow letters. Agent Vasquez approaches a bench. Your Honor, thank you for holding the defendant. Mrs. Harrington, I'm Special Agent Vasquez. I need to ask you some questions about your cash withdrawals. Catherine's voice is defiant despite her obvious fear. I'm not saying anything without my lawyer. That's your right. But I need to inform you that we're executing search warrants right now on your residence at 847 Ocean Drive, Newport, and on Harrington Capital Management offices at 200 Clarendon Street, Boston. We're also freezing your personal and joint bank accounts pending investigation. You can't freeze our accounts. That's our money. When there's probable cause of structuring and potential money laundering, we can absolutely freeze accounts. We're also issuing subpoenas for all banking record for you and your husband for the past 7 years. Judge Caprio asks, Agent Vasquez, what happens next? Your Honor, based on Mrs. Harrington's admissions in your courtroom, we have probable cause for structuring charges. We'll be taking her into federal custody. She'll be processed and held pending arraignment in federal court. Meanwhile, our forensic accountants will analyze the Harrington's financial records. If we find evidence of tax evasion, money laundering, or fraud, additional federal charges will follow. Catherine is handcuffed. As she's led out, she's crying, her makeup ruined, her expensive clothes now seeming absurd in the context of federal arrest. Over the next 48 hours, the investigation accelerates rapidly. IRS forensic accountants discover that Jonathan Harrington has been hiding massive amounts of income in offshore accounts. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Accounts that were never reported to the IRS. The numbers are staggering. $47 million in unreported offshore income over 7 years. Tax evasion totaling $18 million. Money laundering charges for moving funds through shell corporations to hide their origin. Catherine's structuring wasn't random. She was withdrawing cash to pay for luxury purchases and expenses without creating paper trails that would lead investigators to the offshore accounts. 3 days after Catherine's arrest, Jonathan Harrington is arrested at Harrington Capital Management's offices. The scene is captured by news cameras. The CEO being led out in handcuffs, his empire collapsing around him. Federal prosecutors filed charges against both Catherine and Jonathan Harrington. For Jonathan, tax evasion, money laundering, securities fraud, conspiracy, and false statements to federal investigators, facing up to 30 years in federal prison. For Catherine, structuring financial transactions, conspiracy to commit tax evasion, money laundering, and obstruction of justice, facing up to 15 years in federal prison. The story dominates financial news. Hedge fund CEO arrested after wife's courtroom display exposed tax evasion scheme. The irony is perfect. Catherine's arrogant display of wealth, meant to mock a $350 parking fine, unraveled a massive criminal enterprise. Harrington Capital Management collapses. Investors withdraw $3.4 billion. The SEC opens investigations. The company is liquidated within weeks. 6 months later, the trial begins in federal court. The evidence is overwhelming. Bank records showing the offshore accounts. Shell corporations created to hide money movement. Catherine's own statements in Judge Caprio's courtroom, recorded and transcribed, admitting to structuring withdrawals. The jury deliberates for 1 day. Guilty on all counts. For both defendants. Jonathan Harrington, 22 years in federal prison, $18 million in back taxes plus penalties, forfeiture of all assets connected to the crimes. Catherine Harrington, 8 years in federal prison, forfeiture of assets, permanent bar from serving as officer or director of any public company. After sentencing, reporters asked Judge Caprio how a parking ticket case led to the exposure of a $47 million tax evasion scheme. Judge Caprio responds thoughtfully. Catherine Harrington came into my courtroom believing her wealth made her above the law. She mocked a $350 fine by displaying $10,000 in cash. But that display raised questions. Where does someone get that much cash? Why carry it? Why withdraw $25,000 in structured amounts? Those questions led to answers that exposed years of criminal activity. Did you suspect tax evasion when she first pulled out the cash? I suspected something was wrong. Legitimate wealth doesn't require carrying massive amounts of cash. Legitimate wealth doesn't require structuring withdrawals to avoid reporting requirements. When someone displays that kind of behavior, it often indicates they are hiding something. In this case, they were hiding $47 million from the IRS. What would you say to people who think wealthy individuals get away with mocking the system? Wealth doesn't place anyone above the law. In fact, the wealthier someone is, the more scrutiny their financial behavior should receive. Catherine Harrington thought $350 was meaningless. She learned that arrogance and criminal behavior carry costs that no amount of money can pay. 5 years into Catherine's sentence, she receives a visitor. Special Agent Linda Vasquez. Catherine has changed dramatically. Prison has stripped away the designer clothes, the jewelry, the arrogance. She's wearing prison blues, her hair unstyled, no makeup. She looks like a completely different person. Mrs. Harrington, I wanted to talk to you about your case. Catherine's voice is quiet, humble. Why? The case is over. I'm serving my sentence. I wanted you to understand something. Your husband's tax evasion scheme harmed every American who pays their taxes honestly. That $18 million he hid, that's money that should have funded schools, infrastructure, health care. Instead, he hoarded it while hard-working people paid their fair share. I know. I think about that every day. Do you understand how we caught you? It wasn't sophisticated investigation work, at least not initially. You walked into a courtroom and mocked a parking fine by throwing money around. You were so arrogant, so contemptuous of the system, that you exposed yourself. Catherine nods slowly. I thought money made us untouchable. I thought we could do whatever we wanted because we were rich. I was wrong. What have you learned, Mrs. Harrington? That wealth isn't real power. Real power is integrity. It's following the law even when you think you can get away with breaking it. It's treating everyone with respect, including parking enforcement officers and municipal court judges. I had everything, and I threw it away because I thought I was better than other people. I wasn't. I'm not. If this story moved you, subscribe right now for more moments where Judge Frank Caprio proves that no amount of wealth, no designer clothes, no offshore account place anyone above justice. Hit that like button and share this because everyone needs to see what happens when arrogance meets accountability. Remember Judge Caprio's words. Legitimate wealth doesn't require carrying massive amounts of cash. Legitimate wealth doesn't require structuring withdrawals to avoid reporting requirements. That's the legacy of Judge Frank Caprio. That's the dedication of Special Agent Linda Vasquez. That's the power of asking one simple question at the right moment. One parking ticket. One mocking display of cash. One simple question. $47 million in hidden offshore accounts exposed. 22 years in federal prison for the CEO. 8 years for his arrogant wife. And one lesson learned too late. In Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, wealth means nothing. Character means everything. And justice applies equally to everyone.